Welcome back to Daf Yomi B'Iyan. In this video we're going to discuss the topic of good or agud, which is a topic that comes up on Baba Basra Yud Gimel Amid Aleph. So here's the case. The Mishnah taught us about situations of property that, let's say, is inherited by two brothers. Now they're partners in the property and they want to divide it. The problem is it's pretty small. The Mishnah explains the rules of how if it's so small that if after physically dividing it, neither portion is going to be big enough to practically use, to be worthwhile to maintain and use, then the halacha is neither brother or partner could force the other to physically divide. The Gemara discusses, okay, what if you have that situation? Reuven and Shimon inherited, let's say, a field, and it's, again, pretty small, so that, as one big field it's functional, but if you split it in two, neither portion will be functional. The question is there possibly a recourse here? Is there a way that one partner could force the other to dissolve this partnership? And that possibility is called good or agud. It means that, let's say it's Reuven, gives Shimon a choice. Says, here are two options. Either good, either you buy my portion out, pay me for the value of my portion, then you'll have the whole thing. Or agud, or I will purchase the value of your portion. I'll have the entire property. If Reuven gives Shimon such a choice, what is the halacha? So the Gemara says it's a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Nachman. Rabbi Yehuda says that indeed Shimon must accept one of these options. He has to choose one of these. Either he can buy out Reuven, or he can agree for Reuven to buy him out. Rav Nachman though says, no, Shimon could say none of the above. I don't want you to buy me out, I'm not buying you out, I want to keep it the status quo, I want to keep the original field, we'll take turns, we'll share this field. That's what Rav Nachman says. So, the question is, how do we understand Rabbi Yehuda? As a first glance, Rav Nachman is saying very good. Rav Nachman says, listen, Shimon is an owner, here's the co-owner, and again, you can't physically divide, it's too small. So why does he have to agree to this proposal that Reuven makes? Why should he have to agree? He says, I want to retain the property itself. I don't have to dissolve the partnership. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say, no, you do? You have to accept one of these options. Now, there are many approaches in the Mefarshim, the Rishonim, Achronim. It's a much discussed issue. And we're going to bring out one of the approaches that's found in the Rishonim. And I'd like to show, perhaps, or prove a little bit, support this approach based on the Gemara that we learn on Yud Gimel Amid Beis. Where there is attempting to find support for Rav Nachman, and it brings a brisa which brings a dispute between the first opinion, we call him the Rabbanan or Tanakama, and Reb Shimon ben Gamliel. And the case is as follows. Let's say again, we have our field that's pretty small, so that if you physically divide it, it will not be large enough for either partner to, it's not going to be large enough to be worthwhile. But let's say Reuven again offers, you know what, I really don't want this partnership, I'm willing to give up part of the size, the amount that I'm entitled to, so that you'll end up with a large enough field. And what if Reuven offers Shimon that? So the first opinion says, of course, Shimon law. Of course, how could Shimon refuse that? It seems from the brisa that Reb Shimon Gamliel argues, he says, no, even if Reuven makes such an offer, then Shimon could refuse. The Gemara finds that very hard to understand. The Gemara ends up saying that we're talking about a case, really there is a sort of a loss to Shimon, and therefore Shimon is able to refuse. But it's clear from the conclusion of the Gemara that even according to Rav Nachman, who gave Shimon a lot of rights to stay in the partnership, we said that in Amid Aleph, in this situation, however, were it not for the fact that the Gemara comes up with the way that Shimon is losing out here, perhaps he doesn't have the money, or it's Sonei Matanas Yichya, whatever the Gemara says there, were it not for that actual significant loss, then Shimon could not refuse. Even according to Rav Nachman, all opinions, all Jews in Klal Yisrael would agree that Shimon would have to agree to this offer. The question is, let's pause for a minute, let's ask why. Why does the Gemara feel so strongly that according to all opinions, even Rav Nachman, Shimon would have to agree to this offer? Can't Shimon continue to just simply say that I'm a co-owner here, you're making a wonderful offer, I know it's a really good offer, Reuven, I appreciate it, but at the end of the day, I own this property, I would like to keep a portion of the original property, I'd like to keep the status quo. Why can't Shimon say that? So I think the answer to that question is that there's a situation where we say, Kofan al Midas Sodom, that Shimon, come on, to refuse this offer, that already is behaving like a person from Sodom, because it's no skin off your back. Zenena, Ruvain stands to gain over here. Zelo chaser, you don't stand to lose, so you have to accept such an offer. That, I believe, is the logic, is the why the Gemara has a premise here that in this situation Shimon has to agree. If that's true, I think that provides a basis to understand what Rabbi Yehuda is saying on Amud Aleph. Meaning, on Amud Aleph, what are we talking about? Reuven's not offering to give up any part of the land, but he's making this offer of good or agud. Rav Nachman says, that's not such a great offer. Shimon here can say that I'm not being like a stone person to not accept that offer. I want the original land that I originally inherited. So therefore, Shimon has a right to maintain the status quo. Rabbi Yehuda argues that, come on, there's no big difference between being financially compensated and the original property. You can either buy him out if you like the land so much, or you can take the fair market value, the worth of your portion. Rabbi Yehuda argues to refuse such an offer is being like a person from Sodom. And so the reason is Kofen al Midas Sodom. Rabbi Yehuda says Shimon has to accept good or agud, one of those choices, because again, it's Zanena v'zelo chaser, he stands to benefit, it's no skin off your back, and that's why he has to accept one of these options. And in fact, if you look on your sheet, source number 4, the Shalos and Shuvas Harash says exactly this explanation. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say this idea of good or agud? Because it's a case of Kofen al Midas Sodom. But again, there's no real reason for you to refuse. There's no big difference between the choices here, and therefore to refuse is like being from Sodom. So we force you to accept one of the choices. Now, we did not discuss yet the aspect of the price. In other words, it's easy to understand this if Ruvain is offering the fair market value of the portion, good or agud, either buy me out or I'll buy you out. But the question is Ruvain allowed to set a price way over the fair market value? So this is something discussed in Tosfos. It's source number 5 on your sheet. It's right on the daf there, and Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Tosfos Divrei HaMaschol, Istina the good or agud. And Tosfos brings a dispute about this question between the Ri and the Ritzba. The Ri says it's not a problem at all. Go right ahead, Ruvain, you can charge, you could set whatever price you want, way over the fair market value, that's totally fine. According to Rabbi Yehuda, that's within the rights of good or agud, that's okay. The Ritzba comes along and says, no, you can't do that, that's not right. If you charge such a high price, he's not going to be able to afford it, and you're going to be able to force him out. So it's not right, and therefore you can only charge the fair market value. Now, first glance, how do we understand, what's the Ritzba's problem here? How do we understand what the Ritzba is saying? What is the problem with charging way over the fair market value? You're saying that's going to be very expensive for Shimon, so Shimon will just call Ruvain's bluff. Shimon will say, oh, you're charging me $1 million for a portion that's really worth $100,000? I accept, so good. No pun intended, you have to purchase my portion. I'm going to choose the good option. From Shimon's point of view, you buy out my portion for $1 million, and Shimon will make a killing. So, what problem is there? Let Ruvain set whatever price he wants. Because of the fact that obviously it's a choice here. He is not saying that, I get to, you have to buy me out for $1 million. He's saying, either you could buy me out for $1 million if you have the money, or I'll have to buy you out for $1 million. So what's the problem there? And you can't say that the issue is, no, Shimon just has an absolute right to keep his property unless he has the option of paying the fair market value, some inherent right to keep that land, because again, we're saying Rabbi Yehuda's whole concept is that, it's Kofen al Midas Sodom. It's not really any skin off your back, so you have to agree to this. So what's the Ritzba's issue exactly with Ruvain setting a price way over the fair market value? And this is a fascinating example of how one of the Gedolei Achronim takes a look in the way they infer from every single word of Tosfos. And we have an example of this here, how the Marsha finds one word in Tosfos, and based on that one word, it completely changes the whole understanding of what's going on in this Tosfos. And that is the word b'chatzer. He points out, the Marsha points out that the Ritzba is basically saying it's not fair to charge such a high price. So why then does he say you can't do that b'chatzer? In a courtyard, that's not right. In a courtyard? What does it specifically have to do with a courtyard? Good or agud is a question by anything. Fields, any property, bathhouse, whatever it is. Why is the ritzbah mentioned b'chatzer? It seems totally out of place. So the Maharsha explains that's the answer. That's what the ritzbah is really talking about. Meaning, of course, the fact alone, Ruvain charging over the fair market value, that's fine, no problem at all. Because again, if you're going to charge $1 million for a property, a portion that's worth $100,000, Shimon will call Ruvain's bluff and he'll say, okay, good. He'll say, buy me out, I'm going to make all that money. But what is really the ritzbah's issue? It's an issue of, in the case of a courtyard, that could be a problem for Shimon. Because the Maharsha explains, and this has to do with, there's a rush that deals with this issue. He says you can't say good or agud by a chatzar. Why? Courtyard. Because the courtyard is obviously used by the house. It's important for the house. It's like part of the house almost. And so what's going to happen if you do good or agud in a courtyard? Yeah, you're going to offer the fair market value for, or you're going to go a little over, for that portion, but it's not really fair because if he loses, he ends up having to give in and lose his portion, then there goes the courtyard of his house, and now the value of his house goes down. So the point is that there's a specific concern of a problem, and it's not going to be fair to Shimon by a courtyard. And that's what the ritzbah is talking about here. So it's like a whole different subject based on this Maharsha. And now we can easily understand the back and forth between the Ri and the ritzbah. That is, the ritzbah says because of the potential problem that it could be unfair to Shimon in the case of a courtyard, so it's never fair to charge over the market value. The Maharsha explains why. If he's charging the market value, it won't be a problem by a chatzar. See there in the Maharsha. The bottom line is that the structure is, the ritzbah is saying, because good or agud, charging over the market value by good or agud, in the case of a courtyard, it could be a problem, therefore, we don't let you overcharge in general. The Ri says, okay, maybe by chatzar I agree that you shouldn't charge over the market value, but elsewhere, by a different property, it's fine. That's what the Ri could easily say. So this is a completely different way to read Tosfos, and we have this interesting way of understanding, as the Shas and Shuvas Arash says, possibly that the logic of Rabbi Yehuda is Kofan Midas Sodom. Why does Reuven have to accept this offer? Because not to is being like a person from Sodom, because it's no skin off your back. There's no real difference here. If you really want to keep the land, then buy out the other guy. If you don't mind, they get financial compensation, and therefore you can't refuse it. It's a case of Zanenev Zelo Chaser. So, some interesting information on the sugya, some points to think about in this whole discussion. Hope you've enjoyed, and we'll see you in the next video.